Welcome to the World Builders Anvil, episode 319. Yay!
Digging your world for details.
Don't know where to start building your fantasy world?
Do you need more? Does it make sense?
Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination.
This is the place where we will prime your mind.
Now, it's time to heat up the forge.
Break out the mithril ingots and hammer.
Welcome to the World Builders Anvil. I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Let's sup from the mug of Java and build.
My name is Jeffrey Ingram.
And welcome back. I'm Michael Miller.
We've been social distancing since our teen years.
What makes it
That might become the catchphrase of the show.
what makes it funnier is the Muppets keep popping up. I'm gonna be crying by the end of this. So as you may have recognized, dear listener, we have imposters and guests on the show today.
So the show should be better. Plus IP stealing, but they can't see that because it's audio. So thank goodness.
I'm not stealing that.
Well, we would technically be stealing it if we were showing it, but that's not even true because that would probably be fair use.
So we're
eat that, Disney, eat it.
We're going to be talking about all kinds of things today, but mostly the big subject is digging your world for details. And with us today is John and Dawn Metcalf. Now, we've talked about Dawn a number of times before. John and Dawn have both been on the show before. We are thrilled to have them both with us today. Guys, thank you so much for being here today.
And Michael completely remembers both episodes.
I have them memorized.
They're memorable.
Very memorable.
And we all have the pleasure of being friends in real life. We've set several game tables together. So at this moment of time, as the panic starts growing in the U.S. over the coronavirus, we are social distancing together online.
And we're digging for details in order to.
That's right.
Now, we wanted to do a little talking about the coronavirus. I know because you guys have not heard enough about it.
Just as a side note, I would like to mention that no one on the show is a healthcare professional, and if you're feeling any symptoms or want to know any actual information about the coronavirus, you should seek medical attention or authoritative source like the cdc.gov.
Jeff, is there anything particular you wanted to start with, or do you want me to talk about?
No, because I plan to finish up the show talking a little bit about it, so you could talk a little bit now. I'll talk a little bit later.
My big thing is your wife actually had reshared somebody's video, and it was great and informative, and that inspired me to do a little more digging and learn a little more about this myself. The big thing I want everyone to get behind is the quelling the curve, or flattening the curve, as everybody's saying. It's going to be a buzz term, like if it isn't already by the time you hear this. But also, like, let fear take a back seat. Everyone try to relax and calm down. So I wanted to share, this is from the CDC, how it's spread. And there's two things they have written here, and it says person to person, which is a technical term when it comes to disease spreading. And previously, I had heard that it was not person to person. It was only through respiratory droplets, which is the second one here. And the big thing on the respiratory droplets is everyone's like panicking if they're around someone that sneezes or coughs. It's not airborne. So a person can sneeze and cough in your vicinity. It doesn't mean they're going to give it to you.
What's the droplets?
It's the droplets. If you touch the droplets and touch your eye or your nose, you get it near a mucal membrane, you have a very high chance of contracting the virus. So, that's why everyone's pressing the wash your hands and the sanitize your hands bit. And I thought previously the sanitizer doesn't kill the virus. Apparently it does. So soap and water, wash your hands frequently. If you're out there in the world touching surfaces, make sure to wash your hands after doing so. And just live your life. It's okay. I mean, obviously the whole stay indoors and quarantine yourself thing is important with the John's going to be killing me this whole episode. What you're not seeing is John miming hand washing with a Kermit the Frog puppet. So you can imagine that. The whole quarantining yourself and not going out, that is so that we allow the spread to occur slowly. The spread is going to happen regardless. We're not going to prevent that from occurring. But what we do want to do is slow it down so that it occurs over the course of 18 months as opposed to 5.
Yeah.
Because if it occurs really fast, that is going to hurt our healthcare system, possibly our economy. It's going to make things very difficult for all of our infrastructure. But it is going to happen regardless. But we just want to have it happen nice and slow. So stop being afraid. It's okay. You're going to be fine. We're all going to make it through this. Don't, be getting into fist fights in Walmart for toilet paper.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, you probably don't need 7 years worth of toilet paper in your house.
Probably not, unless you eat John's cooking.
But even then, you don't need the toilet paper. You can get by without it.
What you like it spicy. You like spicy food.
Spicy meatball.
You're originally from New England, so you don't really know what spicy food is.
That's true.
A lot of black pepper here in my chowder.
I get to about jalapenos is about as spicy as I get.
Yes. All right. So now I think the basic sum up there is don't worry, use hygiene, but that would actually probably be good in everyday life, because even like seasonal flu and most other things you can also help prevent if you actually take the time to wash your hands properly. And if you have to go out, do what you need to do. Don't do extra trips unless you need to, and try and support who you can, in your life. And don't go by your grandmother if you're sick. Or anyone's grandmother, really, not just yours.
Yeah.
I've said happy birthday this many times in my life.
What?
Well, that's what they're saying is when you're washing your hands, it's how long you wash your hands.
That's right.
Effective. They said that so you should sing happy birthday
twice.
times.
Yeah, I heard that.
So yeah,
I forgot about that.
In a lot. You say, so there you go. So.
But see, I do it the Marilyn Monroe way, so it takes me like 10 times longer than anyone else. But yeah.
So Jeff's hands are really clean.
Mr. President. All right. Okay, everyone. So now we're going to get a little bit into actual world building here. And the idea is I've been watching way too much Time Team on television. So my idea is we have 3 days to cover this topic.
What is it? Time Team?
Time Team. It's an archaeology show.
Time Team. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Never heard of it.
And it was on for like 20 years, which is probably why you never heard of it. It was only on for like 20 years. And essentially the idea is they kind of dig little pits to figure out the story of an area. And the thing is, the interesting thing is it's always the details that they find, a pottery shard near a wall, something that really gives them idea of what life was like at the period of time, which apparently in England, which is where they do all of their digging, pretty much every backyard has a prehistoric, a Iron Age, a Bronze Age, a Roman, and a medieval site underneath it. So you can pretty much dig anywhere in England and dig up stuff. But in the US, it'd be like different. You dig my backyard and you would maybe find Jimmy Hoffa. But actually, I don't know if that's true or not, though.
I think if you dig in my backyard, you'll just find like recycling from a couple months ago.
For a couple months ago. But essentially, it's the recycling that they're looking for, though. But the idea, though, is a lot of times when we get into world building, we focus a lot on creating a great
pottery shard. This is from Israel. We went to Israel.
Awesome.
Literally, you could go.
So
here.
what age
Yeah, what
is
have you got there?
So
This is go ahead.
This was a piece of pottery that was from
The Assyrians.
the Assyrians.
Oh,
and this was
So
Do they know you have it?
yeah. Yeah, for any of the places that they had, and we went to a big dig out there with family, and any piece that was not recorded where they had dug it up was therefore useless. You couldn't identify what era or what how deep it was or anything.
Because a lot of times it's where it's found on the ground is how they
right. So if it's just been found, they're like, we can't use this, so you can take those home. And they had like this huge amount of shards, and I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to have pieces from the era that we were talking about when we were out there?
Yeah, that's neat, because I remember I was watching one of the episodes and they dug down and they found like the wall that they were looking for, and then they ran into a problem because there was another wall that was crossing it underneath, and they're like, oh, I guess there was something else here before. And now the site gets older. It's a very fascinating process. But the thing is, as world builders, a lot of times people get focused on creating a religion or a world or a universe or even a character, and they keep thinking of like this big, massive thing. Like they're trying to think of the forest, or they're trying to think of the trees within the forest. But a lot of times when you engage in fiction, it's a moment of time in a show or a movie that latches your heart onto it, and you never forget. It makes the bad guy worse. It makes the good guys better. It makes it more epic than it would have been before. But it's these little spices, the allspice of fiction that really makes stories, to me, like those are the things I live for, and usually when you talk to your friends about something, it's about those moments, so.
Right.
And
So if we were writing an apocalyptic story right now, instead of talking about the stats and the transmission and all that stuff, we'd be talking about the toilet paper shortage and how everyone's freaking out about that, because that could happen in real life.
Mm-hmm.
It could.
It could.
It seems a little far-fetched.
But I think you're not trying to tackle an entire religion or anything. If you remember from Indiana Jones, right, and he's about to try and take the little statue and put the sand on top of it. And the statue is representing this, ancient culture that was supposed to be there, but it was there just to take it.
Yes.
But you could go off on all the what do you do? Sorry, I was being distracted by Kermit.
John needs a visual medium.
It's right. That's right. The idea that he was down in this archaeological dig and this whole culture was being represented there with all the traps and things like that in order to get this little monkey god thing. That was the culture. But what we really remember was that moment, that tense moment where he was about to take it and put the weight on top in order to not trigger everything else happening, which of course did not work.
And the truth is, like in a scenario like that too, as the world builder, you probably know a little bit more than gets shared on the screen, but you don't need a whole culture, because really you're looking for a scene with a moment in a room where a guy's swapping out a statue, with sand. And that is actually one of these iconic moments, right? That, and Indiana Jones actually has several of them. And
can I
had another one listed down below, I believe. I at least had one in mind that was beyond that. This iconic moment. And really, I think a lot of times when you have a show like Indiana Jones that you love, Raiders of the Lost Ark, not the Crystal Skull Mountain thing, but when you have something like Indiana Jones, it's these several moments of spices that make the overall world and world building better, and people will overlook the mistakes that you're naturally going to have because you have holes in it, because you can't recreate 4 billion or 11 billion years worth, or however long the earth is worth of stuff to develop a show or a book or a role-playing game.
And can we just acknowledge how dumb Indiana Jones is for thinking that little bag of sand was going to weigh the same as that gold idol? It's going to be heavier.
No.
He even took some out.
He did. He was like, this seems like the right weight. That thing probably weighs 6 pounds, and that sand probably weighs.
What's going through his mind? In his mind, he's thinking, you know what? I'm Indiana Jones. I need a party. Okay.
It was a prop. It probably weighed like a couple pounds.
This is close to the same weight. I'm going to dump some sand out because I want to run.
Of course, if it was a prop, John, when Indiana Jones actually did it, there wasn't a camera there to record him doing it, so they had to recreate the moment. Besides, the idol is now in a museum where it belongs.
Is it now an American Idol?
It's an American Idol.
It's an American Idol now.
But I think the other iconic moment with Indiana Jones, which I don't think was more cultural, it was just very character driven, but told us a lot about the character and also the world that he lived in.
Which is probably the one I've written down.
When he shot him.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of, because it's not necessarily even about a world building element. In this case, it would be a character, which is technically a world building element. But that's exactly one that kind of moment I always go to right away with Indiana Jones. Is like he's just like, I'm tired. I just don't have time for this. Bang,
And the thing that's really funny about that is the truth behind that sequence is that Steven Spielberg and George, which one created Indiana Jones, Lucas or Spielberg? Spielberg created him, but Lucas, don't give me that look, because Lucas was very involved with the creation of Indiana Jones. Anyway, but he wanted Indiana Jones to be very recognizable, and you can see from Indiana Jones's profile, you immediately know who it is. The hat is the dead giveaway, but then you look down and you see the whip on his belt, so that's Indiana Jones. And he didn't want the whip just to be a visual. He wanted it to be practical as well. So they had choreographed a very complicated fight sequence with that guy with the sword and him with the whip. And at the time, it was like 104 degrees. Harrison Ford had a fever. He was very sick. He probably had coronavirus. And they were doing the fight sequence. And at one point, he stopped and thought to himself, why would I waste my time with all this when I have a 6-shooter on my hip? And he pulled the gun out and he fired. And they were like, cut. And he's like, I'm so sorry. He had ruined the take. But Spielberg was like, no, that's perfect. We're leaving that in.
It's hilarious.
Yeah,
So-
no, I think there's something about that organic moment.
Mm.
And those organic moments come out of when you, the author or the creator, have made your world so deep, like what would happen in here, and we, the reader or the player or the person who's enjoying it, don't need to know all that background. When you do something and it feels that it fits and it feels correct for the character or the world or the moment that you're in, that's genuine, and I think it's
and instead of wasting his time. Like all Harrison Ford characters, he just shot first.
That's right. No, actually, not in the remake. They just remade it, and actually, now the guy threw a sword at him, and then Harrison.
And then,
shot.
then he did. Okay, it was self-defense. It was a self-defense shot.
Self-defense.
Of course. Wouldn't want him to look like a.
I think that what we're talking about, my example would be Lord of the Rings, right? So if you read Lord of the Rings, you have to be the right kind of geek to enjoy, like, oh, and this big guy begat that guy, and here's his genealogy, and here's this huge stop in the action for like a 5-page tirade, and like I eat that stuff up, and
Why am I reading Deuteronomy?
But the movies put all that in the background, so you get this sense of history visually, and through some other clues. That you just can't do on black and white on the page.
Yeah.
And so the narrative gets to continue, but you still get that depth. And so I think that's sort of the brilliance of storytelling and how the different media happen and where those details make such a huge difference. So in Tolkien's case, the reason why his work is really so iconic, if you forgive it, but is a level of depth and mythology involved where but it made the narrative like rough, right? And so I think we're world building. It's difficult as an author not to try and show off how much you've created.
It's understandable.
Get into like the the sociological implications of that, which a reader doesn't give a damn about unless they're.
Do you have any idea how much Eastern mythology I had to read to make this believable? And now I'm going to share that with you.
I researched. I got it.
Right. And I think the irony too, when you get involved in it, is a lot of times people get caught up on what's, that doesn't make sense based off of the culture you've revealed so far. But if humanity has proven one thing throughout time, is the more humans that are involved in the creation of something, the more things that come up that are actually illogical within cultures, to the point where you get into the Russian language where I don't think you have any regular verbs, and that's the end game for humanity, is we have no regular verbs.
But there are those iconic moments, I think, because the more that you were bringing it up, the more I was thinking about it. I can think of some cultural ones, but I also think of ones that just establish the tone of a story, or how we would relate to the antagonist or the monster or the whatever. And for me, it was the alien chest burster.
Yes, that's funny. I think I have Birth of the Alien written down as well too. See, Dawn's better at hitting my show notes than you are, Michael, and she's not even trying.
Well, I don't. But the difference is she reads your show notes, and I don't.
I bet you she hasn't.
Wait, no, I had that on my own notes. So
yeah, I was going to say, I bet you she didn't. You don't need to. That
I actually
that Birth of the Alien
that one. Yeah,
not only says a lot about the universe, but like it tells you that this is not your 1970s science fiction anymore. That was the day 1970s science fiction died. Thankfully.
Yes, 70s. Yeah, that era was tough. It was much slower, but not in a good way, because Aliens does move slowly, but it's tense the whole time. The thing that I was actually thinking of is a book reference, though they did recently make a movie out of it that was serviceable, I guess, is Ender's Game. In Ender's Game, Dawn's making
I was not a fan of the movie. I love the book.
I love, and I can make complaints about the movie, but with such a big story and with such a grandiose attempt, I'd like to think they did a serviceable job as best they could with what they had, because that one book should be like 3 movies. It really, there's a lot going on.
Don't do that.
Anyway, but for me, the moment in Ender's Game is, and I'm referring to the book, not the movie, is when he gets in the fight at school, and you don't know until, or rather, Ender doesn't know. I think as the reader, you do find out. You think you find out early, is that he actually, spoilers for those of you who have not read the classic Ender's Game, which is like 30 years old or 40 years old at this point. Spoilers, big spoiler. So Ender gets in a fight in school very early on, and there's multiple bullies, and he beats the kid to death. He doesn't know that he beat him to death. He just thought he beat him down really bad. But in the first 1 or 2 punches, he knocked the kid down. He didn't need to hurt him anymore. He proceeds to stomp on his face, kick him in the head, and really pound him while eyeballing his friends. And he's like, you know, you can all jump me right now and kick the crap out of me. But here's the thing. I'm going to do this to you too. And it may not be today, may not be tomorrow, it might be months from now, but I'm going to get you back and it's going to be like this. And they asked him, like, why did you do that? It seemed, you know, way overboard. It seemed savage and brutal, and it was. But he's like, it was calculated from his perspective. He said, well, I didn't want to just win that fight. Like, what do you mean? He said, I
believe
wanted
they're
to
going to
win.
come out with a new movie with Liam Neeson.
I like how you're interrupting
this.
right at the crucial moment. I love how you do that. He said, I didn't want to just win that fight. I wanted to win all of the fights.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, by doing that, he avoided all the future fights because everyone's too afraid of him. And I thought, in that book, that's the moment, even though there's so many other huge set pieces and crazy star fights and tons of crazy business that happens in that, but that was the moment in that book and in that story. All right, Jeff, what was your very important interjection?
No, my interjection was Liam Neeson is going to play the lead character in that role. So.
Are you serious?
No, just it sounds exactly like every other movie he's made within the past 10 years.
True.
Because Liam Neeson always established his dominance early in the film by violently cuddling a cat or something.
I think I missed that episode.
I'm sorry, I just made that up. My hallucinations and my narratives interrupt each other.
Those are the best stories, though.
But now I've got this great visual of like a grizzled Liam Neeson with like a little Persian.
Kitty. Take it. Yeah.
We're all petting imaginary cats. Does not come over on.
I know that'll make a lot of sense to people who are listening to this show.
Well, we're talking a lot about characters and things. I'm an 80s geek as well. So I was thinking of Lord of the Rings. I thought was a phenomenal job of taking the culture and putting it across 3 movies. I was thinking of Labyrinth and Dark Crystal actually is the big one for me, because Dark Crystal created multiple cultures that they didn't even have to explain them. You understood by the architecture or the pieces that they found or the pictures in the ruins. You understood a lot about this culture. Ogra and her observation tower and all this, and the prequel that came out and then became this huge sensation on Netflix that they did was they just took the richness that had been existing for 30 years, right? These movies and books and graphic novels that they've made, and now had been able to take that and go into a prequel, and you could see the origins of those things. Those little details, the way that the crystal looked, or the way that Skeksis dressed, or how the little creatures were like running around in the background, that established a lot about the world and the flavor of the world, that when you saw it 30 years later on screen, you were right back.
Yeah.
You were back in it.
Skeksis' friend.
And you know, Dawn's referencing Jim Henson a lot, but I assure you it has nothing to do with her crazy fandom. Just saying.
John's holding
Dawn
up
is showing like every Muppet
Fraggle.
in her room, so
No,
And
I'm
again-
showing like everyone that's within arm's reach. I haven't left the chair.
that he can possibly lift, which is not, he's only human. He can only carry so much, people.
I just want to see him run in the room with the near far outfit on. I want to see him like way far from the computer and be like far, and then run up to the computer and near.
No. I want him to do the Fraggle Rock run.
Show me far.
Da, 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 da.
All right.
John,
Once again, the show devolves.
Dawn, do you guys have this outfit? You're making me think you have this outfit. Do you not have this outfit?
No, but we have the Elmo does it. Do you remember the Elmo?
Elmo does. That was probably after.
Oh, I
my-
remember Elmo from earlier days, but
Yeah, no, Elmo was later. We had the giant Elmo that our kids would play with, and
Because I'm a martial arts instructor, we start with
Oh, I am cripple. I won't.
Cripple Me Elmo. Yes.
Cripple me, Elmo. Yes, I
Think of
forgot
punchline.
about that. I know. I'm sorry. It
Yeah.
slipped out, and then I was like, "Oh no, I just stole John's punchline."
Jeff, you got nothing on Mike.
Yeah, sorry. I totally just pulled a Jeff. So, actually, share that. Explain that, please.
Oh, okay, yeah. So my daughter was the brightest daughter ever, of course.
Still is.
Yeah. And so when she was, we got her big Elmo, and it was like, oh, look, here's Elmo's nose, here's Elmo's eyes, and she got that stuff down like this. So eventually, I was like running out of stuff, and I was like, here's Elmo's elbow. And Elmo doesn't really have elbows, so I was like really stretching her, right? And so I'm like, fine, okay. Here's Elmo's philtrum, and here's Elmo's temple, and it really didn't take long from that to kick Elmo in the groin. Okay, Elmo in the temple. So
the one that sticks out for me when you originally told me the story, it was like, okay, attack Elmo's solar plexus, and it became
Cripple Me Elmo.
Cripple Me Elmo.
Yeah.
It was a teaching tool.
It was
A parenting moment.
my child learned anatomy through
Beating up Elmo.
disembowelment.
Well, Sesame Street will go to no ends to make sure kids learn. So I think that's very
as
appropriate.
all children should, John. As all children should.
I did my part.
The Ender's Game method of anatomy.
Oh. Yeah.
So, Jeff, we're like skipping all over the place here. And back in the iconic details that make stories memorable, you have a bunch of references to some of our favorite fictions. We've covered a couple of them, but do you want to go back through and cover some of the ones we missed?
Yeah, or just come up with other ones we go to, because there's a go-to one Michael and I have talked about 17,000 times on the show, which is ironic because I think they're like 7 episodes of the show. But it's the kicking the guy into the engine in Firefly. That was another moment. It was kind of like in Aliens with the birth of the alien. You're like, oh, this is going to be a little different than what I'm used to.
Yeah, I was going to say, for me, that didn't necessarily set the tone as what to expect so much as what not to expect. It was
It broke the mold, and iconic moments can go either way.
It threw me into the engine too, because I was like, okay, now I have no idea what's going to happen, because that moment prior to him going into the engine was like, okay, they're setting a tone here, and this guy is going to be like their nemesis throughout the entirety of the show. And they're like, no, that's not how this is going.
Yeah,
Like,
we were all set up, and I think Whedon, because I think he was a 3rd generation filmmaker, and he knew what the setup felt like. We thought this is going to be the nemesis height.
He was following the trope perfectly.
Yeah, he was following the trope. He was going to hunt them down for the entire series, and we knew where this was going. Kicking him into the engine. Sorry, big spoilers for anybody who does not follow Firefly. Yes, please do. Was the idea that this was like, you cannot follow trope for this.
Mhm.
We're going to throw something unexpected to you. But it also told you a lot about Mal. It told you about the kind of ship he runs.
Mhm.
So that later on in the series, where he confronts a member of his crew who betrays, how he reacts is not something that is outside the norm. We've seen this from the beginning. We knew that this was possible, and to see it brought it full circle for me. And you have those moments where now you know what to expect, and you also have a feeling of the world because of how gritty it is.
Curse you, Robert Murdoch.
I recently finally got to watching Steve Martin's masterclass, and in that he talks about not boring your audience with the expected. And in Bowfinger, which he wrote, there's a scene where it's a breakup scene, and you've got what's her name from Heather Graham. You've got Heather Graham, who is much younger than Steve Martin, and they're dating in the movie. She's very attractive, and she's playing a young starlet up and coming. And he finds out that she's slept with another guy, and this is the breakup scene. He's going to break up with her, and she comes into the room, and he's like, "That's it, we're finished." And you expect, okay, we're about to watch this long breakup sequence, and it's going to be the scene that we've seen in plenty of other movies. And she's like, "Well, why?" And he's like, "Because you slept with so-and-so." And she's like, "So?" And he's like, "Oh, well, I didn't think about it that way. So we're still going out tonight?" "Yes." "What time?" 8:00. "Great." And the scene ends. That's it. Because he's like, don't bore the audience with something that they expect. So if you find yourself writing your way into a moment that you know exactly how it's going to pan out, and odds are, based on what you've set up, the audience does too, maybe consider twisting instead of turning, and zigging instead of zagging. You know what I mean?
Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anthem.
We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends.
And so would they.
If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting.
Take them to Stitcher or iTunes, or best of all, just send them to our website, www.gardul.com.
That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the myth was hot.